Hello, everyone. My name is Srishti Rajveer, and I'm a digital transformation consultant at Hyperbots. Today, I'm delighted to have Claudia Mejia as my guest. Thank you so much for taking out the time, Claudia. It's great to have you today.
Hi, Shri. Nice to be here with you.
Definitely. And a little bit about Claudia for the audience. She is the managing director at Ikigai Edge. And today we'll be discussing negotiating payment terms. So let's get started. So, to start off with, can you provide or give examples of the payment terms that should be negotiated with vendors?
Well, there are several terms that can be negotiated. So let's start with the period. You can negotiate 30, 45, 60 days. So those are some typical terms that you go through the contracts. Also, early payment discounts. An example is 2% discount if you pay within 15 days, within 20 days. There are also terms regarding installment payments options. So there are contracts that you actually can pay it in installments. The other term would be methods. So if you pay by check, it's different than if you pay electronically or debit card or credit card. So those terms also can have a different type of fees included or excluded. And another term that is very usual to negotiate is volume. So that helps for longer term relationship. And sometimes vendors, depending on the volume, they have tiers that you can just move up or move down. And those are the terms that usually I see in the contract. So by addressing all these terms, you just make sure that the relationships are steady and that you kind of making sure that both the supplier and the vendor have a longer relationship.
Understood. And that is extremely important as well. Now, can you outline the key factors that companies should consider when negotiating payment terms with the vendors?
I would say the most important, but not the most important, but it is important to understand the cash flow of your organization. So by knowing that, you will set certain terms. It's also important to understand the financial stability of the vendor, how they can carry the relationship through the year or to the period of the contract. Industry standards, obviously, it's important to benchmark your contracts, your terms with the industry standards. And I will say, always think about these relationships as a long term relationship. It's important that when you have good relationships and you build terms that really have the foundation to go for the long run, right? So the stability for both the supplier and the vendor is important. And at the end of the day, it's about meeting the business goal.
Absolutely. And what are some of the best practices for negotiating favorable payment terms?
Well, I will say it's important to do the due diligence, right? Just research, make sure that you understand the benchmark, the industry standards, before you go into negotiation. Understand what is your bargaining power as well. But more important is to, when you go to negotiate, you go for a win-win situation, making sure that really the conversation are collaborative and they are really the objective is to have a mutual benefits for the companies. Favorable terms lead to longer relationships, and that's what is most important. But obviously, documentation is important when you go through the negotiation. Everything should be documented so you always know where you stand and what are the expectations.
Absolutely. And that makes sense. And this is extremely helpful. Can you provide examples of favorable versus non favorable payment terms for different types of payment agreements?
So I will say, let's talk about payment terms from the period. So for example, you can have 2% discount if you pay within 10, 20 days, or you can call it the 220 net 60. So if you pay within the 20 days, you get 2% discount. That can be say is favorable. I wouldn't say unfavorable, but it's more standard. It would be just net 30. So you don't have discounts if you pay early, but is a fair standard. And then, for example, installment payments. You have to understand what is the flexibility of those installments. If you go past certain thresholds, also you can pay more interested or not, right? So it's the fairness setting up those installment payments. And I will say also penalties, right? So let's say that you have an installment payment and then you don't pay on time, then you can not only accrue the interest but also pay penalties on top. So all the things carry weight with the cash flow, and so you need to make sure that you check the boxes of how all these terms impact your cash flow management.
Definitely something to keep in mind. How does Hyperbot's payment AI copilot assist in analyzing and optimizing payment terms across multiple vendors?
Well, the beauty with the Hyperbot AI agent is that it can analyze the payments across all the vendors. And by doing that, it understands the patterns. It can benchmark those patterns with the industry standards and then can provide insights about what is the best for that specific vendor. And also, it will give you the insights for negotiate better for the company. If you know that these are what other vendors are doing and you have the comparisons and the insights, then you have more power to negotiate. Another thing is that you can have the predictive analytics and it will kind of give you a little insight of what a vendor may do and have strategies about how to react to certain things. So that's the beauty of the agent. The agent is proactive, it's not reactive, and you have insights in real time in your fingertips when you need it.
Understood. And that is extremely helpful. How do you balance the need for favorable payment terms with maintaining strong vendor relationships?
Well, I will say that always comes to communication. When you have good relationships, let's say that you have an impasse that for whatever reason you cannot pay within the terms established, but you communicate with the vendor why you're having this impasse and when you'll be able to make the payments, that's the most important thing. And it's not a matter of just, oh, now I have to pay the penalty and all these kind of things. It's just a matter of saying, these are my situation, let's communicate, let's work it out. And that leads to always a mutual benefit for both the companies. Ultimately, these agreements are to make sure there is company financial health and ensure that the vendors feel heard and that you can trust. So it's a mutual trust, I will say.
Definitely. And the key takeaway here is communication is key. So that brings me to the last question. What advice would you give to the other CFOs looking to enhance their payment terms negotiation strategies using AI tools like Hyperbot's payment AI Copilot?
Well, I will say that this is the time for the CFOs to embrace the AI tools. And specifically, Hyperbots can connect their financial system to their agents and then provide the insight that we were talking about. So by connecting this, then you have the visibility of payments data, how the vendors are behaving, how the analysis of the payments. And this is just great information for you to have all the time. So I will say to the CFOs, start embracing AI tools and connecting the data for better decision making. At the end of the day, when you have a tool that can give you the insights, that you can connect the dots and benchmark with the industries, and at the end of the day, be able to negotiate to the best of the ability with the information, and then you have a better relationship with your vendor. So that's what I will say. Go and start embracing AI, start embracing these tools, and just see the benefits.
Absolutely. And this has been extremely insightful. So, with that, we have come to an end for today's discussion. But thank you so much for joining us. Insights. Also, big thanks to our viewers. I'll see you around and have a good day.